Dedication of the Loewy Institute, Lehigh University, April 29th, 2016. Thank you, Dr. Farrell and Professor Mijulek, for your kind introduction. When Kathy Zimmerman asked me if I would like to say a few words today, my first reaction was, do I really have to? On second thought, I realized that as president of the Loewy Foundation, it would be most appropriate not only to present a short review of the history of the Loewy family and the origins of the foundation, for those of you who may not be familiar with the story, but also to thank the many people at Lehigh who have made the creation of the Loewy Institute a reality: administration, faculty, staff, and students. Your current president, John Simon, whom I had the pleasure of meeting for lunch a few weeks ago in New York City, pointed out that he was my fourth president. Peter Likens was my first. The Loewy family was Jewish and grew up in a small town called Betchow, near Pilsen, in what at the time was Bohemia in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In 1918, it became the Republic of Czechoslovakia. The Loewys always considered themselves Czechs. My grandfather, Leopold Loewy, was a salesman, and my grandmother spent her time having and looking after their 13 children. Two of these children were especially gifted. My uncle Ludwig, born in 1887, and my father Erwin, 10 years his junior, born in 1897. At a very early age, they made it life difficult for their parents by taking all manner of things apart to find out how they worked, and then putting them back together again, which didn't always succeed. Among these items was a piano and a watch. The piano seemed to have survived the dissection without incident. However, when it came to the watch, there was a screw left over. Oddly, it kept better time than it had before being dismantled. Both boys got their engineering degrees from the Charles University in Prague. In 1913, Ludwig initially worked for a German shipbuilding firm in Berlin, where he designed huge diesel engines for the first Atlantic Ocean liners, among them the Leviathan. A year later, he joined the firm of Edward Schliemann in Düsseldorf, where he designed machine tools, rolling mills, and hydraulic presses. Mr. Schliemann died just 1 year later, and in 1921, Ludwig bought the majority interest in the company and became the controlling partner. When Erwin concluded his studies in 1923, Ludwig invited him to join him at Schliemann, but not wishing to work under the aegis of his brilliant older brother, Erwin declined and went to Paris, France instead. Needing employment, he checked the want ads in the local newspapers and made an appointment for the position of general manager at the famous perfume and cosmetic firm L'Enterique. Not having a clue about the manufacture of perfume, he spent the next 24 hours studying all about it, proposed 2 new scents at his interview, and got the job. The Loewy presses soon gained international renown, and Ludwig traveled extensively to procure orders for the company. Erwin finally joined his brother as sales manager at Schliemann in 1925 to look after things during these extended absences. With the rise of the Nazis in the mid-1930s, Ludwig left Germany and went to England, where he established the Loewy Engineering Company Limited. Erwin stayed behind and managed Schliemann until the fateful day in 1935 when someone took a potshot at him whilst he was on his way to have a date with my mother, Margaret Zander, in Ella, a suburb of Düsseldorf. He left for England immediately, and my mother joined him there. They were married in Bournemouth on November 12, 1935. They settled in Paris, France, where my father established another new engineering company by the name of Speedem. It is also the place where I was born, and to which my father's parents, Leopold and Charlotte, and 2 of his siblings escaped. My Aunt Erna went to England to look after her brother, as she had done for many years in Germany. Both Ludwig and Erwin worked diligently on persuading the governments of their adopted homes to build extrusion presses for the production of airplanes for national defense. These aircrafts were later decisive in the outcome of World War II. On June 10, 1940, my father left his office on the Champs-Élysées early to go home when he unexpectedly ran into the Czech Consul General, Mr. Voch, who was shocked to see him. He told Erwin that he must leave immediately with the whole family since the Germans were at the gates of Paris. That very same evening, we started traveling by car to the French border with Spain until we ran out of gas and had to abandon the car, climbed over the Pyrenees like the Von Trapps, and continued from Spain to Portugal. A very tense moment occurred when my mother was searched and made to strip completely at the French border. She was wearing a turban with many folds into which she had sewn as much money as possible. Fortunately, it was not found or detected. The first night after leaving Paris, we spent in the courtyard in Chartres. One memory of that night remains with me, but at the time, I didn't know what it meant. I remember sleeping in the front seat of the car, my grandfather in the back, and being awakened by bright orange and yellow lights like fireworks in the night sky, and lots of noise. I only found out a few years ago when sorting through papers in the archives here that what I remember is the Germans bombing the Chartres railroad station that night. At some point, my father took off for Vichy to acquire the identity cards for all of us needed to pass the border into Spain. He was neither aware that the Germans were looking for him, nor that they had put a price on his head. He also acquired passports with fictitious names and entry visas to the United States. Major Albert Quetebec of the U.S. Army, who was the representative of the Loewy Engineering Company in New York, was instrumental in procuring these entry visas through his connections in the State Department, assuring the family's survival. To express our eternal gratitude, the 50,000-ton press is named Major. We arrived in America on November 6, 1940, and passed through Ellis Island, where all immigrants were registered and vaccinated against smallpox. I was terrified of the needle and still have the scar to show for it. We remained in New York City, and my father founded another design company, Hydropress, which opened offices in the General Electric building. Several engineers who have been in the employ of the Loewy brothers abroad also successfully made it to the States and joined the firm. Tragically and unexpectedly, Ludwig was diagnosed with stomach cancer just 3 weeks before his demise on October 10, 1942, the day he had planned to arrive in New York for a visit. He left his estate in equal parts to his siblings. Erwin continued to build on Ludwig's legacy and guided the 3 existing companies in creating a few more throughout the war and thereafter. The size of the extrusion presses during the ensuing years kept increasing in tonnage, working toward that goal of creating a 50,000-ton press, which was completed in 1955. Loewy Hydropress subsequently entered the space age technology with designs for the first motion simulator for the Polaris missile and the first launch pad for the Vanguard rocket. After the death of Ludwig and Erwin in 1959, 6 of their remaining brothers and sisters decided that they wanted to honor the 2 brothers, their great achievements, and the values they stood for by leaving their combined estates to a foundation that would support philanthropy in the areas innovation, education, and public service. It came into existence with the death of Erna Loewy Butler in 1986. My late husband, Andrew, became the first president of the foundation. The board began to look for a university that would welcome an endowed chair. They approached many of the major engineering schools, such as MIT, Harvard, Rensselaer, etc., and none were interested. One day, the family's accountant, who was a member of the board, was telling his daughter, Karen Pantleon, a Lehigh alumna, about the situation, and she suggested that we contact Peter Likens, who was most receptive to the idea. Christine Smith sent us a wonderful proposal. Betz Avitzur became the first professor to hold the Loewy chair. and Wojtek Mijolik has been the captain of the ship that has led us to this day. As I have previously indicated, there have been many people at Lehigh who have been instrumental in achieving this milestone. Names that come to mind are Steve Cutliff and Gail Cooper, who helped organize a Loewy exhibit that graced the entry hall of Whitaker for a short time, which has been in storage far too long and hopefully will be resurrected at some point. Of great importance was the insistence of the librarians, Mary Boltz, Phil Metzger, and currently Lois Fisher and Ilan Chitak, who helped to conserve my dad's personal papers in special collections. Most important of all have been the ladies in the development department, who have all become dear friends. I already mentioned Christine Smith, then came Rochelle Goodman, and recently her successor, Kathy Zimmerman, who is responsible for organizing this entire event. I am grateful to all of them, but especially to Kathy, for the fact that the dedication of the Institute is taking place this year, 2 years before the Foundation has completed providing the grants necessary to create such an institute, and I'm still around for the celebration. Before closing, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of my son-in-law, Scott Wyckoff, for creating the original design of the Foundation logo, and the group of design students who were inspired by it to create the logo for the Institute. It was to be a surprise for me, and it succeeded.